What's up, guys? It's Zach with Upstairs Studio, back at it again with another video. Today we're going to be talking about microphones. Obviously I have a couple different types in my hands, and today we're going to talk about what the differences are. Alright, so the most popular microphones you're probably going to see in a studio are going to be dynamic microphones, condenser microphones, and a ribbon microphone. I don't happen to have one. But today we're mostly just going to be talking about these two, the dynamic and the condenser. It's probably what you're going to mostly be looking at. Ribbon microphones are generally a little more expensive, and they're a little more fragile. It takes a little more, there's a little more care involved in using those. So we're just going to go over the condenser and the dynamic. So we're going to start with the dynamic microphone. This is an SM57. It's made by Shure. It's probably one of the most popular microphones. There's also the SM58. I talk about these in my last guide. It's going to be up on one of these cards. They're awesome microphones. On it, it shows you the polarity pattern, which is great. You can't really see that super well there, but it is there. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but these are awesome microphones. You can do just about anything with them. I use mine for guitar miking. You can also use it for drum miking. It's great for that. It has a really tight polarity pattern. Again, we're going to talk about that in a second, but really good for isolating and cutting out other noise. So if you have something that's really specific that you want, like for me, I want my guitar cab to not be bothered by anything else that's going on in the room. So sometimes I play guitar and I don't have to wear headphones because you don't pick up hardly anything with this thing. It's super particular about whatever's in front of it, it records. A very great microphone to have in your arsenal. The other thing that's great about dynamic microphones is that they do not require phantom power, which is awesome, whereas condenser microphones do. So that's a good thing to know for sure when you're looking at dynamic microphones. They're also super affordable. I think, actually this was given to me, but you can find them for like $100-ish. They can be even cheaper they can be cheaper even used, obviously, on Guitar Center, Sweetwater, wherever. They're great microphones to have. I cannot suggest them more. They're definitely something you should use. So whether you use the 57 or the 58, they're both super versatile. They're a little bit different in their sound signatures, but you're not going to be disappointed with it. If you're looking for a good all-around microphone, or dynamic microphone rather, you can't go wrong with the Shure SM57 or 58. So moving right along to the condenser microphones. So this is probably what most people think of when they think of a condenser, or like a podcast microphone. It's what a lot of people have been calling them, especially with the COVID lockdowns and stuff, and a lot of people getting into podcasting. I absolutely love my Blue Spark. I got it for about $100 used at Guitar Center. Awesome microphone. I really love the response that it has, response range, and the sensitivity that it offers. And it also with this microphone, I got kind of a little bit of a low-end hum when I would put not even that much gain through it. It'd be about 1 or 2, maybe 3 o'clock, and it'd start developing this really low-end hum that was just obnoxious. I'd have to cut it out anytime I was doing anything with this microphone. It was a good starter microphone. I got this, a case, which is actually nice. It's kind of nice to think about when you're getting something is how you store it. It also came with a small diaphragm condenser microphone. So there's a couple different types of condensers. You can kind of see it over here better. Obviously this is much smaller, this is larger. It's pretty self-explanatory which one you're going to be looking at generally in the name. Sometimes when the grills are like this, it's a little tough it's even hard to see the microphone, but sometimes it's a little tough to tell what size the diaphragm is, but more often than not, they'll tell you what it is. And again, it's pretty obvious that this is smaller. So something that's super important to note about all condenser microphones is that they are going to require phantom power. This is going to be notated by a 48V on your audio interface, and that's going to allow them to work. It's pretty plain and simple. If you don't have it, it just won't function. It needs that in order to work. All right, so now we're going to get into the polarity responses. That's something that I mentioned earlier in the video, and this is going to basically tell you where the microphone is able to hear from. So for the SM57, this is a cardioid microphone. So essentially what that means is, and this is actually a good example of a difference between a dynamic microphone and a condenser microphone, is that this is much less sensitive. I can see it in the waveforms. It's tiny, super tiny. You have to get real close to it. I mean, it's touching my mouth now. And you're probably getting a little bit what's called the proximity effect, where it kind of boosts the low end just because it's so close, and that's kind of a characteristic of cardioid and hypercardioid microphone patterns. But you can tell, so like if I'm talking to it now, that's because this is where the microphone hears from. And so that's kind of a good way to kind of conceptualize how polarity patterns work, and it's something that you do want to be cognizant of when you're buying a microphone, because if you buy something that is omnidirectional, for example, you might be recording your vocals or something, and it's going to hear something that's over here. It's going to hear something that's on the back side of the microphone, because just the way that that plate is made and created, it's going to just have a very different. I'm going to put this down. Okay, so that's kind of an example, again, to conceptualize how those polarity patterns work. That was the cardioid polarity pattern type, also known as the unidirectional, like one directional microphone. This is also a unidirectional microphone. Again, that means that it's going to have most of its most effective response is going to be in the front of it. It kind of looks like a heart shape. Again, I'll show some of those polarity patterns up on the screen so you have an idea of what that is. It's also, you can just look it up, but I'll go ahead and include some of those so you can see it a little bit easier and it'll make a little bit more sense. I'm also going to include a guide down on the bottom for a microphone guide. Please check that out. That's something that's going to help you know and have like kind of a list of the information that I'm talking about here. So that way you don't have to remember, oh, that's a hypercardioid, that's an omnidirectional, that's a figure eight. You'll be able to just kind of have it right in front of you, make it a little bit easier. So next we're going to go over the omnidirectional. I already touched on it a little bit, but basically what that means is that you can hear it's the same level of response all around the microphone. So if you're looking at it like this, you have a full circle, no null points. Null points are basically going to be where there's null, there's no sound. With a cardioid, it's kind of shaped like this, and the null point is behind it, as you can hear in my example earlier in the video. So unfortunately, I don't have an omnidirectional or a figure eight microphone, but you can kind of get the idea based off of what I did earlier with the SM57, kind of showing you what you get when you're trying to speak through the null points or record something through the null point. So next is the figure eight pattern. This is also pretty self-explanatory. It's figure eight. So you have the microphone, and then just imagine here and then down here. So you have two null points on the sides of the capsule there. So that's where it's not going to be as effective. Generally, these are really good for, along with omnidirectional microphones, these are good for room mics, picking up kind of those little bits of magic that maybe a piano has, or the little bit of sizzle that certain drum sets have, or whatever your room sounds like. So it's good to pick up those extra sounds when you're recording in that space and you have room for a piano or a drum set. Okay, so last but not least, we're going to talk about the hypercardioid polarity pattern. They look kind of like a mushroom, so it's sort of shaped like this, and then it has a little something going on down here. So they do have some weaker points right here where they're not going to pick up as good. And it's going to pick up a little bit of, it's like a quarter of the sensitivity that it has from its primary recording space. So if you think about it like you're holding it, you have a really good response here, and you're going to get a little bit from about where my hand is. Again, these can be good for miking a guitar cab or using on drum kits. If you're trying to do something like with a snare drum or something, you would probably still want to use an SM57 because it's just laser focused on whatever it's pointed at. So now to kind of wrap stuff up, those are the types of the main polarity patterns. There are a couple more. You're probably mostly going to be using cardioid and hypercardioid microphones in your studio. And for example, all the mics I have are cardioid patterns. So that's not a bad thing. So the space in my room, I don't really need it. I can get away with using just another condenser for my room mic if I want that, if I need that sound. They're just expensive. They very quickly jump up to $200, $300, $400, $500, thousands of dollars. Like if you're getting some Earthworks or some Neumanns, they are not cheap. Personally, I can't really afford that right now, and I don't really have an application for it. So it's okay. You don't have to feel bad about only being able to afford a condenser that has one polarity pattern on it. You can buy them where it has a switch on there. AKG has a couple of them, and you can change the polarity response on them. It's pretty cool. And you can also, some of them you can change. You can have a low pass on there or a high pass on there, and you can roll off or you can pad a certain amount of decibels. It's pretty cool, and it's fun to use those, but you don't need to have that type of microphone. You don't have to have that to record music at home. For the longest time, I just had a super crappy first act dynamic microphone that I used for recording audition tapes for colleges, and it was fine. It didn't sound great, but it was good enough to do what I needed. And that's really, if you're starting out, that's kind of what you're looking for, is something that's going to be good enough and carry you. I will say that you want to make sure you're investing your dollars properly. I think that the SM57 is a great microphone to have. An Audio-Technica 2020, that's a phenomenal condenser microphone. Those are going to be two great options for you, and you can probably get both of those. If you buy them used, you could probably get both of them for around like $150–200. And then you're set. You're pretty well set for a long time. Something I totally forgot to mention earlier is that for your condenser microphone, you are going to want a shock mount. As you can see, I have one on my Blue microphone, and then I also had one for my Sterling audio microphone, which I do occasionally use. This shock mount came with the microphone, and generally that's how they're packaged. If you get one that doesn't come with one, you just want to make sure that the shock mount that you're looking at is the right size and has the right type of threads on the bottom for that microphone. It's going to be a little more of a case-by-case basis, so there's not really like a best practice I can give you. They do make adapters as well, so if you get the wrong size, you might not be totally up the creek without a paddle. You can get some adapters and things to make them fit better, but just make sure that that's something that you're thinking about when you're looking into your condenser microphones. For your condenser microphone, you want to make sure that you're looking at pop filters. It doesn't really matter what you use as long as it's going to stop the abrasive syllables like S's, T's, P's, things like that. They can pretty easily overload the signal, and then you'll have a random spike in your audio, and you could potentially clip. You probably will, and it helps with that. So that just about wraps everything up. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching. Please download the guide down below. I'm gonna have more of those, and I'll have more stuff that I can give out to you guys. Again, I also have some other guides up here that I'll put in the video. If this is our first time meeting, thank you so much. Please consider subscribing. I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comment section, what you liked, what you didn't like, if there's anything that could be improved upon. I'm here to help, and I want to know what I can do to be better at that and to be more effective. So go ahead, let me know. As always, thanks guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.